I just wanted to do one project to go out to the North Pacific Gyre, which we did in 2009. And we studied, we're the first group to study where that all the plastic was in the middle of the ocean with Scripps Oceanography, who we brought with us on that trip. And it was the first time
the ocean vortex? Is that
yeah, the plastic
size of
vortex.
Texas?
Right.
Excuse me. The size of Texas, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, but what it is not is a big island that people think. And so, there's some images there that people think, wow, it's so big, you can go out with a big crane and just pick it up. How come no one's done that? Well, it's not. It's 1 million square miles, and it's all the water samples we took had plastic in them.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean all the water samples?
So we took samples of plastic from 300 micron small nets, which are usually used for catching, for looking for algae and different microorganisms. And you do water sampling every 2 hours at 1 knot for 15 minutes. And so every little batch of water that sample comes out of the net, you can check to see if there's, organic matter or plastic in those little nets. And we found it in every single sample for the whole 3.5 weeks of our trip.
At what depths are we talking?
This was surface. That's a good question. But we did, and we're the first to ever use a ozeki troll, which is a Japanese name, but it's a giant net about the size of this room that goes down 500 meters.
Whoa.
And you troll with that for a certain period of time, and then you bring it up, and then you see what's inside. And so we found a hatchet fish, which actually only lived, this was kind of significant because they only live at depth. They don't migrate to the surface and eat at night like many fish do and migrate back down. Vertical migration, not horizontal. And one of those fish that usually lives down there had plastic in its stomach at 270 meters, and another one we found at 180 meters.
Well, that's significant.
So what it meant is there's 3-dimensionality to this plastic. It wasn't just the surface. It floats or it sinks, and it has different characteristics of buoyancy. And some are higher, some come down. In fact, most people don't realize when you throw plastic in water, almost 2/3 of it will sink right away because it's just more dense than water. The things that you see are the ones that happen to float more than others, which is styrofoam, plastic bottles. Plastic bottles will sink if they don't have air in them. But a lot of them have air in them because the top is still on, and therefore they float around like a little sailboat.
Which is my image of the plastic vortex, is this image of just an ocean, strange way, a mass of plastic bottles. But where is most of that coming from? Plastic bottles? Or I've heard that the fashion industry, microfibers.
Well, now that the people have really started testing so many different things since we did this first big expedition, there's so much more knowledge now. So there is looking at microfibers and microplastics. So we don't spend a lot of time on that topic because we as a global community can't hardly get macroplastic figured out. Macro is just a normal piece of plastic, which is garbage. And we can't even pick up our own garbage and fix our littering problems. And often it's not because people want to litter that there's trash somewhere, but it's because the infrastructure and the systems in the cities and the towns and the villages just doesn't exist, and it was never invested in. The government didn't have money. And in many countries, the option is just to dump it, usually in a river, because the river takes it away from your house, or burning it. And 40% of the world waste today is just burned in a front yard somewhere and not even incinerated or waste to energy. And a lot of environmentalists don't like those two options, but at least they usually have scrubbers and anti-toxicity devices on them. Whereas if you just burn it in your front yard, which is what so many people and communities still do, you get toxicity right into the air with all the plastic. You get respiratory problems if you're right close to it. And it creates soot, the carbon black, which is very bad for global warming because the soot's in the air and it absorbs heat. And that's something that's still not even talked about today in this whole fight for ocean plastic and pollution issues. The ocean is the end recipient of our bad activities. And it's the gravitational pull that we all think is sexy and save the whale and save the turtle. But it's all coming from land. And so everything we do in our work now is on prevention and land and, better policy, better recycling, better packaging, all of those kind of programs. Because once it gets in the water, it's kind of gone.
So just if I rewind that conversation for a second, I thought, is this mostly coming from developing nations, or am I being ignorant in the sense when you said, burning, I don't see that happening in Hong Kong, or let's say where I'm from in Australia, or where you're from in the United States,
right?
Or is it? Is it out of sight, out of mind, or is it mostly developing nations where we need to help?
Yeah, very good question. So it's mostly developing nations for that issue. Most cities in the developed world have a waste management system. They have trucks that come by and they want to get the waste off the street so there's no rats and disease and all of that. And they do that pretty well. But in bigger places like Australia, US, they quickly take it to a landfill because it's cheaper to just dump it in land and then move on and get on the next day than try to sort it and clean it and reprocess it and recycle it. So the US and the bigger countries control it better. Doesn't mean that we recycle better. In fact, in the contrary, the developing world is actually almost better at recycling because it's a whole value system of getting materials that are worth something and getting them back into a system to an aggregator, a buyer, a middleman who will take them, whether that's glass, paper, metal, and plastic. Problem with plastic is it's only a few types of plastic that are more valuable than the other ones, and all the hard to recycle and therefore low value will never get collected. And if you're a informal waste collector, of which there's 15 to 20 million around the world, keeping our world clean. I mean, these guys are like the unsung heroes, because if we didn't have them, the whole world would be a mess. They know what they're doing. They know what to pick up. But if you think about your labor and your time, if you could find a bunch of metal, which is heavy and dense, a bunch of paper, which is heavy and dense, you're going to grab that and take it to the trading shop and get some money for 20 kilos. If you're trying to do 20 kilos of plastic and it's blown, uncompressed plastic bottles, it's the size of this room, but it only weighs 15 kilos. There's no money in it.
I've seen some of those photos from India, where you've got the guys on the push bikes,
exactly,
surrounded by a massive crowd of plastic.
That's right. Yeah, there's no densification. If you densify and grind and shred stuff, you could take away 9 times as many trucks to move the same amount of material. So again, why are these things not happening? Uncompressed plastic bottles for a truck to go to some village and pick up 1 ton, that's about 40,000 bottles that might fill up his truck. It's only worth about $300 US or $350. If you at least just shred it and have it cleaned a bit, then you could have 9 times as much volume and weight in that one truck. So you have 9 less trucks on the road, 9 times less pollution, 9 times less issues with bad roads, and the guy, whoever sold it, is worth $4,500 and not $350. And
see what that would lead to.
This could really change the world. But